got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. You are on the Cryptid Podcast with Dan Hamilton. You guys, I got a pretty cool show tonight. I got Norma. Norma's a field researcher. She's been doing field research actively since 2006. She kind of dabbled in it a little bit in 2005. She's had some pretty incredible encounters. She's out of Connecticut. So, y'all just sit back, relax, and get ready to enjoy the show. Norma, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So, hey, I met you on the last live we did on Mysteries Unknown.
Yes.
And so, you reached out to me, you reached out to Josh, and here you are.
Here I am.
So let me ask you a couple questions before we get into your stories. What made you decide to get into doing field research on this topic, the cryptid topic?
That's a good question. I mean, it all started in 2005 when I just started, looking on the internet about Bigfoot, and I guess it went on from there. I can't remember. I believe I had seen some shows like maybe In Search of a while back. There were some others that were out there that I kind of just found and watched. But honestly, I think when I started looking on the internet, for some reason, I can't even tell you the exact reason that I started doing it, but it was fascinating to me. And the witnesses and the stories that were coming out were pretty incredible. So I started there. I started researching, pretty much armchair researching in 2005, and then I would Google encounters near me where I live, in the state where I lived in, which was Massachusetts. Or near there, Vermont, New Hampshire, because we weren't far from either. We were in Western Mass, so we weren't far from either of those states. And there were some things that came up. And I remember telling my husband, hey, there was an encounter, not far in Vermont. Let's go check it out. And we actually did. And what was funny was I didn't even want to get out of the car. What if we go on this trail and we actually, come across a Bigfoot? Well, little did I know years later that just doesn't happen. You just don't go out on a trail and just all of a sudden run into Bigfoot. I don't know why I had that in my head, but I was like, yeah, maybe another day. I'm good right now.
Let me ask you this. So was Bigfoot or cryptids in general on your radar before you started watching videos or seeing a couple of the TV shows? What did you think about Bigfoot?
I really didn't. It wasn't on my radar. I don't think I really got into it until after I saw those shows. And then I started to say, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to see what else is out there. So that's basically how it started. And then after that, after I did all of that, I did get up the nerve to actually go out, in the woods and see what we could see, by researching it with all the things that they were saying, the tree structures and the X formations and, all that stuff. We went out and just kind of try to see what we could see. But I did mention it to a friend of ours, that we were, into Bigfoot research. And he said, hey, I have a friend who might have seen a Bigfoot. And I said, oh, okay. Well, will she talk to us? And he said, well, I'll ask her. And I said, good, here's my number. Tell her to call me. So she did end up calling me. She told me about her encounter, and it was actually pretty. It was 2:00 in the morning when it happened. She was laying on her bed. She was watching TV, and she had a window open. She was in the woods, so she didn't have a whole lot of ambient light outside. I think maybe her neighbor's light was on or something, but not much in the background. And she's caught something in the corner of her eye at her window, and she looked over at the window, and then it was gone, or she didn't see anything. So she got up, went over to the window, parted her curtains a little bit more, and just kind of looked out and didn't see anything. Of course, it was pitch black, so I don't think that she would have anyway. And then she just went back and laid on her bed and started watching TV again, and then again. Corner of her eye, she saw something. She looked over and she saw the space in her window. And I said, okay, so what did you see? And she said, I don't know. It looked like a person, but had, a dark face, hair. She said, I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot. And I said, okay, but just tell me what you saw. And she pretty much described a Bigfoot, and she was scared, pretty scared. And then I don't know if it left. She didn't tell me, how it left or when it left, but she was pretty scared. She didn't sleep in her room again for months before she got over that. And then my husband and I went over, and this friend of ours, we went over to her house and checked out the area, checked out her bedroom window. We measured how far it was. So when she saw the face, it was in the lower pane. It's a double pane window. So it was in the lower pane of the window, like in the middle of it. And so from the ground up to the middle of the window was at least 8 feet. There was nothing under the window. There was, nothing to stand on. There were no rocks. It was just dirt, just flat land. And so that was pretty interesting. And across from her house was a state forest. So we decided that we were going to go check out this state forest. And I mean, it's that close, could be coming out of there, could be traveling, whatever. So we decided to go over there and check it out. And that became our research area in Massachusetts. And we researched that area from 2006 until today. We still go back. It's never failed to produce some interesting things, for sure. And it's been very active. We've been all over that place. We have walked trails. We've been there all hours of the night. There's a lot of game trails, so we travel the game trails. I had an expedition there in 2007 with a group of people, and we had some really interesting things happen. We were there for a weekend. We were there from Friday until Monday. So it was pretty interesting, and it's still pretty interesting. We've had some really crazy stuff happen there. We've been bluff charged. We've had a runner. Oh, that was pretty crazy.
Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and ISO the camera on you, and let's just get into some of these encounters. I'm sure everybody would love to hear them.
Okay,
so
sounds good.
Let's have them.
So the runner, this was about 3:30 in the morning. A friend of ours was with us. He was in the back seat. I'm going to preface it with this. We have done everything as far as research goes. We have been on foot, on trails, in the dark. We've done everything. We've wood knocked. We've put out howls. We've done all of those things. And I think it was one winter that I think it was like 2000, maybe 17 or 18, somewhere around there. It was really cold out. We wanted to go back to the research area. So we decided to do something a little different. We decided to just hang out in the car, take our recording devices, our listening devices, and put them out the window and just sit there and listen, to what is out there and see if anything would come to us, as opposed to us trying to draw something in. So that worked exceptionally well. And you can't see anything. It is so dark out there. There's nothing around you. It's dark. And there are times when you can't even see your hand in front of your face. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. There is nothing you can see. And all you're doing is listening. And let me tell you something. That is pretty awesome, because you start to learn and hear, night sounds and what's what. And you can hear, deer moving, and it's a deer because you hear the four. You hear them shuffling in the leaves, or you hear some other little critter, running around. So it was really, really good. So we started doing that on a regular basis. Now, I'm not saying that we didn't go out again, because we've gone out. We had gone out. We had, camped out. We had sat in the dark. We had done, walked in the dark, all kinds of things. So this one particular night, we're sitting there, and sometimes we're talking. I mean, sometimes nothing at all goes on. It's just totally quiet, and just hear the regular, sounds of the forest, and you're just kind of sitting there. And sometimes you get bored and you're like, where is this? What's going to happen? What's going on? Why isn't anything happening? And the guy that was with us, our friend, he and my husband, I mean, it's like a comedy show in the car sometimes. So it gets to that point when you have nothing else going on. So we were talking, and there was not a whole lot going on that night. And then all of a sudden, my husband and I heard it at the same time. I was like, shh, I hear something. Bob's like, yeah. So we quieted down, and we hear this running, and this thing was booking through the woods. You could hear the branches breaking. I mean, this thing had to have been big. It was crazy. And it started off at a distance, and we could hear it. It was coming toward us. And we just kind of stopped and listened, and we were listening to it running. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. I mean, it stopped on a dime. I don't know how anything can run that fast and just stop so quickly like that. So we're like, what was that? And we're trying to figure out and why it just all of a sudden stopped. Now, at this point, it's a little bit closer to us. So then it started running again. I mean, full on run. No, just jogging. It's just a full on run. And it's coming again, as it's running, it's coming closer. All of a sudden it stops again. And we're like, what? And it's much closer. And we're like, what the heck? So, and then it started to walk. Now, it wasn't, a deer. It was definitely bipedal. You could hear it walking. You hear the crunch, 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 like you're stepping on leaves. It was very, a lot of leaf litter out there. And as it's walking, it's also getting closer. Now, my friend in the back, he's not a newbie, but he's very, I don't know, kind of a little skittish. And he's like, what is going? It's getting closer to us. So we decided to put our lights on to see if we could see anything. And we couldn't see anything, but we could still hear it coming toward us. Then I said, well, why don't we start the car up, put the car in reverse, and look at the backup cam and see if we can see anything, in there. And so we did that, and we couldn't see anything. And all the while, this thing is still moving toward us. We could still hear it walking. It wasn't running, but it was walking. And our friend in the backseat, he's like, I don't know what you guys are going to do, but you better do something because it's right behind us. So I'm like, I kind of laughed a little bit because I'm like, yeah, we can't tell if it's right behind us. Our listening devices are omnidirectional. It's sometimes you can figure out where something is coming from, especially if, you know, like we've had this thing for quite some time. So sometimes we can guesstimate whereabouts it's coming from. And we didn't know where it's coming from. So he was kind of freaking out. And finally we had to leave because he was really nervous about it. And that was one of the many encounters at this particular place.
Okay, so you guys put on your rear facing camera to see if it was possibly behind you. You didn't see anything, but your
No, we
friend
didn't.
but your friend said it was behind you.
Yes, he thought it was behind us, but
Okay,
you know,
so he didn't see it.
No, he didn't see it.
Okay.
But sometimes when things like that happen, you always think it's behind you. You know, your mind just tells you, run, it's behind you, it's
Mhm.
coming at you. And I think that's probably what happened with him. He's just thinking this thing is behind us and it's coming closer. So he was getting a little nervous, you know, a little nervous about it. So we ended
Okay.
up, he was new at the time. And, you know, he was just a little nervous about it. So, yeah.
Well, you had
No.
also, you know, mentioned to me that you had seen a young one, like a
Yes. Yes. That was at the same place. Um, that was, so this place that we went to, we've been all over there. Okay. So we've done research all over that area. We've crossed beaver dams, you know, in the dead of winter, just to get a feel of what's going on in here and what it looks like and what, you know, just what could be in there. And there's no doubt in our minds that there's a group of Bigfoot that like to be there. So, but at any rate, we were, this happened, I think it was in, I'm going to say 2019, maybe, or 20. It could have been 20. We were in the same place. We always go to the same place. When we're in the car, we go to this one area, and they seem to like it there. So we went one night and we're listening again. He's got his H2, it's called an H2 Zoom, and he's got his out the window. I have mine out the window. So we're listening very closely to what's going on. And again, you can't, when you hear things, you can't just assume or jump right to Bigfoot. We wait and we listen, and then we figure out, you know, what it is or what we think it is. So this particular night, when we got there, almost after I set up the H2s and we got situated and ready, and I will tell you this, that when we're out there, so we're in the vehicle, and if we hear anything that comes close to us, I'll tell my husband to light us up. And light us up means put on the headlights. Because if there's anything out there, we want to see it. We want to catch it. It's not going to know that we're going to turn on these bright lights all of a sudden, and hopefully we will see something. So we see a lot, the vehicle lights up a lot of the front area and into the, you know, sides a little bit. So we also have a high powered flashlight that we use. So we're sitting there, and a couple times we could hear something getting close, and we turned the lights on, stopped moving, couldn't hear it anymore, and we shut the lights back off again. This happened several times. And at one point, I thought that I could hear two different areas where there was movement. So I said to, you know, my husband, I think there's two different areas that I'm hearing, there must be more than one out there. So we just kind of kept listening. We hear it get closer. We turn the lights on again, and I'd take the spotlight out and I'd scan from left to right as far as I could on my side. Sometimes he would take the flashlight on his side and he would scan again on his side. Couldn't see anything, and the noise would stop. As soon as we shut the lights back off, you would hear it again. So at some point, let me tell you, at the beginning, when we first got there, I usually do a perimeter check. So when we first got there, I kind of scanned the area. About 30 feet away from my passenger side quarter panel, so we're going to go diagonally from the quarter panel. There was a group of trees, and in between, like these tall, oaks or whatever they were, and there was this boulder in between these two trees. It was probably about 3 feet high, I would say, the boulder, somewhere around there. And I scanned over by those trees and that boulder, and I caught a glimpse of a reflection. So it had rained earlier that day, and I thought, okay, and I didn't tell Bob, I just kind of saw it. And I thought maybe it was rain, or the leaf was wet. Or there was still leftover rain on the leaf or something. And I just kind of ignored it. So I scanned back again and then shut the lights off. And that's when we started listening. So fast forward another, 15 minutes. And again, we turned the lights on and nothing would be there. I would scan again and nothing. So when I scanned over to that spot again, and this is probably about 15 minutes later, I didn't see that reflection again. So I said, okay, either it dropped off or maybe there was a small animal there, on top of the rock or something. I don't know. And it left. So again, didn't think anything of it. Back in the dark we went and we could hear these things. These things were coming close to our vehicle. And we would, like, every, few minutes or 5 to 7, 8 minutes, it would come back closer, and then we would turn the lights on again. And I would take the flashlight back out and I would scan. At one point of scanning, off in the distance, and like I said, there's a lot of trees, but there's where we're parked, some of the trees you can see through to the other wood line. And so as I was scanning out there, I saw eye shine out there. And that was probably, I would have to say, probably like maybe 30 yards from where we were, 30 or 40 yards from where we were. And again, it was high. I thought maybe it was an animal. I wasn't going to, say anything. I just caught a glimpse of it, and then that was it. So I know I keep saying we're on and off, but this is what was happening. It was on and off. The lights would go on, then they'd go off. They'd come close, and then they would, walk away again. So at some point, we turned the lights on again. This is probably about a half an hour or so into us first getting there. So I scanned from left to right. The lights came on, scanned from left to right. And I went back to that tree, and that reflection was there again in that same spot. And I said, well, that's weird. What is that? And I said, so then I started to tell Bob what I was seeing, and I had seen it when we first got there. Then it was gone. Didn't come back until now. I see it again. And he's like, well, what do you see? I said, I just see a reflection. I see an eye or something. And so I'm sitting there. So this is again, it was like, I'm going to say 45 minutes into us being there. And again, we're hearing all this stuff, around us, and we can't see anything. So I say, it's back. It's back in the same place that it was before. And he said, well, what is it? And I said, I don't know. It looks like an eye. And he said, well, what is it doing? I said, it's staring straight at the light. And so I had this beam on this reflection, this eye shine, and I didn't take the beam off of it. I had it on there from the time that I saw it this last time. I kept the beam on there, and I'm like, what is going on here? What is over there? So I kept the beam on there, and I'm watching it. And then all of a sudden, the eye goes behind the tree. So it slowly, if there was a tree here, it slowly went behind the tree. And I was like, it's gone. And he said, what do you mean it's gone? And he couldn't see it because he's in the driver's seat. He can't see past the quarter panel in the back. He can't see because it's low to the ground. And so I'm kind of giving him a play-by-play. And then it comes back out again. And it was just one eye. It just came right back out, but from behind the tree, above the rock. It was above the rock a little bit. So it wasn't that high off the rock or above the rock, and out from the tree. And it came out again, whole entire eye. And I said, it's back again. And he said, what? I said, I don't know what's going on here. I just kept watching it. I was fascinated by what was going on. And then it went back behind the tree again. And then it came out again. I said, there is something going on here. I said, Bob, I think there's a juvenile over there. Because again, we heard this movement, and I don't think that was the juvenile. I think the juvenile was there the whole entire time. But I think his parents were also out there. I know it sounds crazy, but they were moving around. They were coming close to us. They know where this juvenile is. And I guess I can liken it to like if a deer puts their baby, their fawn, somewhere. They put their fawn and then they go out somewhere, and then they go out looking for food. That fawn will stay there until the mother comes back and gets it. And usually it's nice and tucked away and it's nice and safe, and that fawn doesn't move until, like I said, the parent comes back. Maybe, is Bigfoot like that? I mean, did they say, okay, I'm going to put Junior right here and he's going to stay right here while we go out foraging? I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe that's possible, but this thing was definitely there, and it was coming out behind the tree, and it wasn't moving, and it was there when we got there. So 45 minutes later, it's still there. And then it came out again, and this time I saw two eyes, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm telling Bob what's going on, and this thing is coming out and going back and coming out and going back. In the meantime, we're not really paying attention to the noises that are around us now. Now we're focused on this, this eye shine that's over by the trees. And this was only 30 feet from us. It was like 30 or 40 feet from where our vehicle was. So again, I'm like, this, there's something definitely there. And I think it's a juvenile. And so in the meantime, like I said, there was a tree branch break, and it was a pretty good sized tree branch break, but we didn't hear it at the time. We didn't hear it until we listened back to our recording and heard it there. We heard it then. And I said, why didn't we hear that before that? Because we were so focused on this possible baby Bigfoot that we weren't even, like I said, listening to the stuff around us. Then while we're watching this thing, I must have had this thing on, this beam on this infant for about 4.5 minutes, according to the H2. So it was about 4.5 minutes. And at the end of that 4.5 minutes, with the constant light on this potential baby Bigfoot, a huge tree break happened. And we definitely heard that. And at that point, Bob said, I think we better go, because I don't think they're too happy about us watching this baby Bigfoot. And, constantly. So to me, it's like they know we found this baby. they're not happy about it. This huge tree break happens, and Bob's like, I think we better leave. So we ended up leaving, and as we were leaving, I was hanging out the window, and I still had the beam on this thing, and it totally, again, it came out totally and just watched us leave the area. So that was pretty interesting. And the other thing that I had there, we had just bought a night vision binocular, and it was right to my left. And it was only the second time that we took it out. It records and it does video. And I said, oh my gosh, I didn't even get that out. So that was a rookie mistake for sure. I wish I had, but in my defense, it was only the second time we had taken it out. So I wasn't used to having that equipment at the time, but I wish I had taken it out. I wish I had recorded it. But that was really, really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, to have that type of interaction with what could potentially be a very young, Bigfoot, not too many encounters. You don't hear too many encounters like that.
Right, right.
So, through the years, because, you've pretty much been almost out 25 or 20 years. So within that 20 years, have you ever had an encounter that just like left you kind of like shook? Like, we need to get out of here like yesterday, and you didn't think that this encounter was going to stop?
Yes, there were several, but a couple of them earlier on, I would have to say probably in 2010 or somewhere around there, 2015. We had come in, just my husband and I, to see what we could see and what would happen. And we never go out there any earlier than midnight. We're out at midnight. We don't go home until dawn. So we were out there. We had just gotten there, and my husband, we take our dog with us, and she's been doing this with us since she was 8 weeks old. So she's pretty used to, all our antics out there, and she's pretty used to all the noises and things like that. She doesn't really get riled very much, but there are times when she'll have that low growl, and and she's looking out the window. And so we usually take alert when that happens. But again, she sleeps through it all, most of it, but she's a great squatching dog. She's really chill. So, we got there one day again, and we shut down the car. The wood line is not very far from our car. We're on this crappy dirt road, kind of, out in this state forest. And this is the same state forest that was across from that woman's house. So, we get there. Bob put the window down because Jenna, our dog, was looking out the window and growling at that low growl. And Bob said, he put the window down, and he said, I hear something moving around. And I said, okay, well, let me get these recorders ready, and, we can, put them out there. And he said it again. He said, I hear something really close to the car. I said, well, then roll up the window. And I don't know if he was nervous or what the deal was, but I said, just roll up the window then until I get everything ready. So I finally got everything ready. This is like, we got him out the window. We're sitting in the car, pitch black again. And it was about 6 minutes in. We didn't hear anything much. We did hear shuffling. We did hear something very close to the car. I don't know what it was doing. It almost sounded like it was agitated or something. And then all of a sudden, while we're listening to this, and that was the noise that he heard, incidentally, when we first got there. And about, like I said, 6 minutes in, all of a sudden, there was the loudest crack on a tree that I have ever heard. And I haven't heard anything like that since. Right by our vehicle, right on that side where Bob was saying he could hear, something moving. So this thing was like somebody took a Louisville and whacked it as hard as they could against the tree. I mean, this thing was so loud and there was so much power behind it. It was crazy. And we're like, holy cow. Well, shortly, Bob's like, what should we do? I'm like, we're just going to stay here and listen. And all of a sudden we could hear something like a return knock, a distance away. And then a couple seconds later, another tree knock in between the two of them, in between the two knocks. And Bob said, I don't think we should stay here. He said, I don't know if we came up to bothered them from a hunt or something, but this is not good. So we weren't there that night for longer than 7 or 8 minutes. And then we left. So that was pretty intense. The next time we came back, we were like, I don't know, we're on high alert, I guess. We're anything at this point, could happen. There's so many things that happen there.
Okay.
The other thing that was really unnerving was the runner. We call it the runner. Was it the runner that we called it?
Yeah, bluff charge.
Yeah, the bluff charge that we had.
No, that you didn't tell them.
And so we got there and got everything set up. This is a different night, and sat there for a while, and I could hear this subtle, like twig snapping, but it wasn't constant. It was a snap here, maybe a couple snaps there. I could hear the leaf litter crunching a little bit, and I said to Bob, can you hear that? And he said, no. I said, well, I hear something. And so we just kind of sat there and listened again. I don't know how he had his H2 set up. When I put my H2 out the window, it's usually, vertical, and it's up there above, the door frame. He might have had his tilted a different way. I don't know, but he wasn't hearing what I was hearing. And I said, okay, so then it must be on my side of the car, must be on my side, because I'm hearing something. And then it happened again. Oh, before that happened, well, I was still hearing that. Okay. I was hearing the snapping now and again. Then all of a sudden we heard a tree go down. And Bob's like, if anything, and it was a little bit of a distance away. And he's like, if anything comes running through the woods, we're out of here. So he was a little nervous at that point. So again, we're like, okay, what's going to happen now? So again, I'm hearing this little subtle snapping, and that was going on for a good, probably half an hour. Then and then at some points the snaps were a little louder. And I said, well, did you hear that? And he said, yeah, I heard that. And so again, it was so like random and subtle that it was, it could have been anything, could have been anything walking around out there. So about, like I said, half an hour in, all of a sudden, after listening to all of that, all of a sudden this thing decides that it's going to come running toward us. And it started just running full speed at us. And yeah, you could hear branches snapping, and you could hear this thing running. You could hear the footsteps, and and I said, do you hear that? He said, oh yeah, I hear that. And I said, light us up. So he turned, this is like deep. I knew it was on my side, and it was definitely coming running toward my side of the vehicle. And he turned the lights on. He threw the flashlight at me. He said, look out your window. I grabbed the flashlight, looked out the window, and it's across from us or across from my door, again, about 30 feet away. It wasn't that far. There was another stand of trees there, and there was it was like 3 trees. There was a little space between the 2 trees on the right, excuse me, and the tree on the left. And I looked in that direction, and there was an eye shine in the middle of where that space of the 2 trees, the trees were spaced. And this thing was high up. It wasn't, something like a deer or anything like that. It was about, again, it was probably 8 or so feet up from the ground. And there was a huge eye looking, it was partially behind the tree, and it stopped when I took that flashlight out and headed it to, and shown it through to that area, and it stopped, and it was right there looking, one eye just looking at us. And this eye was pretty good size eye, and it was like this amber color. It wasn't like red or anything like other people describe it. It was like an amber color. And it stopped, and I looked at it, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Bob, there's something right over there between those trees." And it must have been hiding and poking its head out, but it had definitely stopped when I took that light up. When I took that light out, and I almost wish that we hadn't turned the lights on, because I don't know what it would have done at that point. Would it have come up to our vehicle and done something? I don't know, but I'll tell you, this was really unnerving, because it was so subtle. It was intentional. It was subtle. It was intentional, and we don't know what the idea of it behind it was. Was it sneaking up on us? I mean, obviously it was sneaking up on us. It didn't know that we could hear it. It just sees a vehicle there or something. But man, I'll tell you, it had intent. And if we hadn't turned those lights on, I don't know what it would have done. I mean, would it have come to our vehicle and charged us, rocked us? I don't know. We've talked about that many times. What happens if if one of these creatures, decides to roll our vehicle? I mean, there's no there's nothing you can do. We had talked about that several times together, and but I'll tell you, and he was like, we are going, and I said, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And so when we first got there, sometimes we'll bring these light glow sticks, right? Sometimes we'll bring glow sticks just for these, curiosity lures of, and when we got there that night, I threw one on my side and he threw one on his side. So they were glowing. So when he said, "We are leaving," I was like, "Oh, come on. It's still early. What is this thing? I don't want to leave." And he said, "Well, I don't care. We're leaving." And so while we're leaving, I said, "Well, can't we just, why don't we just come back? We'll go and then we'll come back." He said, "I'm not coming back." And as we're leaving, I'm watching this thing. It's still behind, peeking behind out from behind the tree. And I'm watching the eye shine as we're leaving. It's watching us leave. So I'm like, I said, "It's still early. We have all night for, to do this." He was not budging. We were leaving. He's driving out. And I said, okay, so when we get to the main road, how about we take a right and see if we can see anything come out of the woods? Maybe it'll come out or something like that. He goes, "Nope, I'm going home." And I said, "Come on, it's so early. Let's go back." And he's like, "No." He goes, "If you can bring me and Jenna home, and if you want to come back, then you can go back. Just let me know what you want in your obituary." And I said, "Well, thank you, Bob. That's really nice of you."
But Bob's a wise man.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, what's the reason?
No.
Well,
No, I want to stay. I want to find out what's going to happen.
What kind of vehicle were you guys in?
We're in a caravan.
Okay. When I had before my first sighting, but in the same area, probably about a month or so before my sighting, my only sighting, we had one that almost tipped over our camper.
Yeah.
So
I've heard it. Yeah.
and I mean, if it wants to, it's going to do whatever it wants to do. So
Yeah. Yeah.
now let me ask you this. So let's talk about, because we got about 15 more minutes. So what is the clearest sighting you've ever had?
I don't know. I think it would have to be either that one or the baby Bigfoot. I think that would be probably the clearest. Wouldn't you say? I think probably the clearest one.
Bluff charge.
Yeah, the bluff charge and the baby Bigfoot.
Higher there, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've, this area, there's so much, and our H2, the H2 that I have 4 of them, and whenever we have someone with us, everyone gets an H2. My H2 is the only one that is recording, so every single event that we have that we've been out there has been recorded. Everything is recorded on there. Now we started researching that area in 2006, up to this point. And then in 2021, we moved to Connecticut. We didn't know anything about this area. We just happened to find out that someone found out that we were researchers and told us that, we may have activity around our area. And we're like, okay, well, we talked to that was my son-in-law's best friend. And we talked to his dad who lives in that area. It's private. It is land protected. There is a preserve out there. There's a cranberry bog way off, from them. There's a lake right there. This area is crazy. Okay. So we didn't know anything about it. We talked to his father. He told us some stories that were, kind of good. I said, okay. So we went there one night, and this road is so crappy. I'm surprised our van even got up there. I'm telling you, this thing is awful. A quick getaway is not even possible. So this was I think it's like his road is probably a mile up to where his house is. And then there's another road that goes off to where his house is. So we park right in that area. We park enough away from his house so we're not, disturbing him. But there is nothing else out there. We have walked out there. We have taken our truck out there. We've gone in about a couple miles. Then we walked another, mile and a half into this forest. There's absolutely nothing there. Like I said, there's a preserve there. We saw a sign for some kind of preserve. We looked on the map. It is just vast. I'll send you a picture of that, when we get off here. So one night we went there. A friend of ours from New York State had come, and she was with us as well. So we went out there one night. We're in our truck. And what we usually do, there's this huge boulder that's about as tall as, it probably comes up to here to me. And it's about 4 feet wide. And we usually park in front of that. We turn our vehicle around so that we can get out quick if we need to. And not on this road, that I'll tell you. So our plan is, so we knew we couldn't get out quick on that road, but his house isn't that far away. So we figured if anything were to happen, we would go directly to his house instead of trying to go up, a mile off this road. This crazy road, we'd run into a tree or something. So we park in front of this rock, and we were sitting there again one night. We had gotten there about midnight. We had set up the H2s. We were just, there was not a whole lot going on. Just a little here, snaps here and there, nothing really major going on. And then my husband finally said, it was about 3:30. And he said to us, when do you guys want to leave? Because again, there was nothing going on. There's not always something going on when you go out there. Everybody thinks there's something going on, but there's nothing. Sometimes there's nothing. It's just dead quiet. And that night, again, it was very slim pickings, if you will. And so he said that at about 3:30, he said, what time do you guys want to leave? And we said, oh, we'll give it until 4. So we sat there and we're listening and we're kind of just talking lightly. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was the most incredible thing. Other than the Louisville slugger and the others, and this is in Connecticut, about 5 miles from where we live. So that's quite incredible. There's a rock, a huge, and it sounded like a huge rock, hit that boulder, and it hit it so hard. It was so loud. It was almost like a crack of, lightning or something. And it hit it so loud, you could hear the shards from whatever rock hit that boulder. You could hear the shards hitting the dirt road, the dirt road that we were on. And we were like, holy cow, talk about getting your attention. That thing was so loud and so powerful, and it came out of nowhere. We don't even know. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know if you heard of the movie. It's a classic, Princess Bride. Did you ever hear of that movie?
Yeah.
Princess Bride?
One of my favorites.
Okay, so do you know the scene where Andre the Giant, right, is off? He's off scene, but the pirate guy is in front of this huge big boulder, and all of a sudden he's standing there by this huge big boulder, and all of a sudden, this rock comes and hits the boulder right by his head. Do you remember that scene?
Oh, absolutely.
It was the hugest sound, right? It's kind of startled you when you're watching the movie. That's exactly almost what it sounded like. It was so loud and so powerful that, I mean, I was like, it's a good and it knew if it wanted to hit our vehicle, oh my gosh, I don't know what kind of damage it would have done to our vehicle, but it, instead of hitting our vehicle, it hit that boulder, got our attention pretty quick. And it was like just before 4:00 when it happened. And we were like, holy cow, what the heck was that? And he's like, well, do you want to leave? And we're like, no, let's see what happens. Let's see if anything else happens after that. So I think we ended up staying until 4:30, and nothing happened after that, except you could hear maybe a crack of, a branch or something like that, but nothing major. But that was pretty incredible. And we go back there still, and we've had tons of stuff happen there, which is great, because when we first went out there, I was kind of a skeptic. I didn't think anything was going to happen. I kind of went into it like, all right, we'll just see kind of what happens. And the first night that we went out there, nothing happened. So I was kind of, all right, well, let's go back and try it again. And when we went back, it was, we had all kinds of things going on. So that again was pretty incredible. In both of these areas, the Mass area and this Connecticut area, I'll tell you, I know, it's hard to believe that we have all these things going on, but everything that we go, every place that we go, every time that we go out there, we record everything.
Yeah.
We always say, what else could this be? And I've said that to Bob so many times. I'm like, maybe it's, maybe it's something else. And he's like, really? Unless there's an 8-foot, raccoon with, a good sized paw throwing these rocks at us, because we've had rocks thrown at us. We had the van hit. Yeah, the van has been hit a few times, and we've been out there during the pandemic. Okay, everything was shut down, right? I had broken my leg. March 15th, I had broken my leg. My husband got furloughed. We were so I'm broken. We're like, okay, well, now we're going to have all kinds of time to go research. And we were living in Mass at the time. And so we spent a lot of time out there. When this pandemic happened, there were no planes going out. You could hardly ever hear planes or traffic or, anything like that, we had some pretty nice time to go out there. And I think a family moved into that area. We had what seemed like a century that we had never heard before. On occasion we would hear something when we got there it would throw these little pebbles, and you could hear it walking around, but that was like far and few between. When the pandemic happened and we were out there in March and in April, there was something out there.
Yeah.
There was something that stayed around our vehicle when we were, listening every time that we went. And that was unusual, very unusual. That didn't happen all the time like that. So I think a group moved in there. And you know what, Bob? I think that's when the juvenile, I'm trying to think if it was 19 or 20. It was somewhere around there where we had the juvenile. I'll have to look on my H2 to usually when I put the H2 on, I'll say what time it is, the date, and the year. So yeah. I have it on, the H2. So, but I'll tell you, it was really cool to listen to that and have these little, rocks thrown at us. I think there was a juvenile out there at one point. This is before the pandemic. That stayed around us, and it was throwing things at us, and accidentally. So we went out there. We don't usually go, unless we're camping there or unless we plan on doing this. We don't usually go out there 2 nights in a row. But this particular time we went out 2 nights in a row. And the first night this thing stayed around us, and it was like chucking, pebbles at the vehicle. And sometimes it would pop up and hit the hubcap or, the tire or whatever. And sometimes it would and they were little. And this went on all night. And it was about dawn that this had been going on. And at that point, it sounded like it started picking things up, like branches and leaves and stuff off the forest floor and just kind of chucking it out. It's almost like I'm frustrated, I'm done with this kind of thing. So it was getting to be dawn anyway. So we ended up leaving, but, and gave it a break. But the next night we went with, my cousin came with us, and we went back there, and cause we told him about all the activity that happened. Now, is it going to happen a second night? We didn't know. But we were willing to give it a chance and see maybe, if it comes back. So we went back the second night, and I had just gotten the H2s. We all were ready and set up. And we were there for, I don't know, probably about 5 minutes in. All of a sudden, we got hit directly on my side of the vehicle with a rock. Now, again, this is the same location where we always park. And we're like, oh, here we go. It's starting already. And we thought we got a direct hit. And it ended up listening back on the H2. And I don't know why we didn't hear it prior to that, but listening back on the H2, it sounded like it hit the ground and ricocheted up and hit our van. So we found out after that it had done that. But when we were there live, it sounded like a direct hit. We didn't hear it hit the ground. The H2 is so sensitive. And I have amplifiers that also get plugged into the H2. So we are hearing everything.
That's the same night we had the metal.
Yes. So when that happened, we're like, okay, well, here we go. This is starting. And so after that, it just was throwing, little pebbles and things like that. And I said to Bob, I think that might have been an oops. I didn't mean to throw it that hard at you guys, because after that, it was just these little pebbles that weren't even, hitting us. Then we heard it. I heard it really close to us. So we got out the spotlight, and I started looking on my side of the vehicle, and again, going from left to right. So I'm heading toward the quarter panel of my vehicle, and I'm going as far as I can. While I'm doing that, I hear this thing kind of shuffling and running away from the light. So I'm scanning, And I can hear this thing moving. So now it's going kind of behind the van over to the driver's side. And there's a dirt fire access road right by there. And it sounded like it was going in that direction. So we're like, okay, let's just shut the lights off and see what happens. We were there for a total of an hour. So at this point, it's probably almost, I think it was almost, when did we get there? At 1 o'clock? It's almost 2 o'clock. And we hear it again, which is kind of, again, just shuffling. It's on the dirt road. You can hear the difference between it being on the dirt road and in the leaves. So little pebbles are coming in. Then all of a sudden we hear this metal sound, like metal dropping on rock. And we're like, what the heck is that? And whatever the metal was, it sounded pretty heavy, and it hit the some rock on the ground. And we're like, what is that? What is it? What does this thing have? And now we're starting to get a little concerned, because at that point, when the rock hit us, we thought it was a direct hit. At this point, and we didn't know otherwise until later, at this point, we're hearing this metal thing. Is this thing going to throw this at the van? I'm like, is this going to, I don't know what it's going to do. Bob's like, I'm not really comfortable about this. I mean, what if it throws it at the van and, breaks the window or dents the car or whatever the case is? So we sat there for a little bit listening to him, listening to what was going on outside. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm not real comfortable with that either. I don't feel like, telling my insurance company that a Bigfoot threw, this metal piece at my car.
We went back the next day before we
But,
found it.
but at any rate, we left. And the next day, Bob and I went back during the day so that we could see if we could find what it was that it threw, if it was still there. So we went, and I took a couple apples, and I don't know, some people have ideas about not feeding, the Bigfoot, and I don't do that very often, but I brought a couple apples to put out there. We went and we looked on that access road where we thought this thing had dropped it, and there was a broken gusset plate on the ground. Now this thing had to have been, what would you say, like 10 inches, 10 inches. And the end of it, where the holes are, the end of it was broken off. So it was just a part of that gusset plate that was on the road, exactly where we thought we heard it. We picked it up and we dropped it on a rock, and it sounded exactly like the sound that we heard. So that was really cool.
We have it. We saved it.
We kept it. We have it still.
Yeah, that's crazy. A lot of people, they experience different things, and they'll just get out of there. I mean, you guys, I don't know. You guys are like a different breed. Something's going on. Something's bluff charging you guys, and you're like, oh, well, let's just hang out for a couple more minutes.
Oh no, it's Bob. It's Bob that wants to leave. I'm like, no,
I'm with Bob. I'm with Bob 100%.
Bob, I mean, how are you gonna, finish this out? How are you gonna? I mean,
you finish it out.
I was a teacher, and I used to tell, and the kids, so I've been on podcasts before, and I've been on Finding Bigfoot a couple times, and I've done talks in libraries and things like that. And the kids catch wind of it. They find out from other students that that I'm into Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And I used to tell them, and I'm also a storm chaser. So, that sort of thing is, that's my thing. And
I got a winner there, Bob.
Yeah.
So I told my students, I said,
either give me gray hairs.
Yeah. I said, either I'm going to be struck by lightning or I'm going to be killed by Bigfoot. I said, but how cool is that to have your your tombstone say killed by Bigfoot or struck by lightning.
Yeah.
He's going to be walking by that stone saying, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I don't know. But hey, I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out to me and coming on the show tonight. Let me ask you this, and there's no wrong or right answer, and I'm sure if people listen to this and they listen to a couple other of the amazing podcasts out there that always ask us, what do you think these things are?
I think they're flesh and blood creatures for sure. What they are, I don't know. I guess my thoughts are maybe from the Gigantopithecus, maybe a relative of that species. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know. There's so many, like you said, there's no right or wrong reason. I don't know if they go through portals. I don't know about, any of that stuff. And people, say they're there and then they're gone. But I've also read that, their hair type sometimes will, if the sun reflects on it, it'll look, kind of invisible, if you will.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah. So is it something like that? I mean, people I've seen and heard of people saying they were watching like a fern or something blowing in the wind, and it was a Bigfoot that was kind of moving, and it almost looked like it was moving, like the wind would be blowing it. Is it something like that? Is it just that they blend so well in their environment that we're not really seeing them move?
They're definitely, they're definitely masters of their environment. They're masters of their surrounding. When they are around, they are the apex predator. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
And they know how to get out of the way. They know how to move. If somebody is looking at them, I guess, down on all fours, doing that whole spider crawl.
Yeah.
We don't know, what they do. Now, if I saw a spider crawl, I think at that point I probably wouldn't go back into the woods. Yeah. That's a little creepy. But yeah, I think it's something like that. But I do think they're flesh and blood. Hopefully someday, we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, again, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
We're just going to stand by for just 1 minute here.
Sure.
So everybody, that's our show for tonight. I can't thank Norma so much enough for coming on the show tonight and sharing her encounters and her experiences with us, and her husband Bob kind of chiming in the background. He sounds like he's got a lot of common sense of getting out of the woods when it's time to get out of there. So, but again, if anybody on watches this, if you guys have had an encounter or know someone has had one and you'd like to come on the show, please feel free to email me at the Cryptid Podcast 72@gmail.com. Again, the Cryptid Podcast 72@gmail.com. Until then, as my buddy Josh always says, stay prayed up. And what I always say is, remember, a legend always starts with a sighting. That's our show for tonight, guys. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?